Greetings, viewers. Eric the Car Guy here. Sorry about the delay there, just making sure all my buttons are pushed. Anyway, welcome to the show. I am Eric the Car Guy. This is a show where I answer your automotive questions posted to my Google Plus event that I usually start like the Friday before or something like that. And I do these every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. Welcome to the show. Now, a few things before we get started. If you're watching this on YouTube, I cannot see your comments there. Therefore, I will not be answering your questions there. I apologize for that in advance. But once again, I can't see those, so I can't do anything about that. But if you do want your question answered during the live show, you do still have the ability to post it to the Google Plus event, and I will do my best to answer as many of these as I possibly can. Also, questions posted to the Google Plus event after the show concludes will not be answered either. So we'll have to do that again in another couple of weeks, which brings me to when the next show will be. That will be February 4th. Also, same bat time, same bat channel, as they say. Let's see what else. Oh, yes. And if you have questions outside of this Hangout or whatever, there'll be a link in the description to tons of additional information. So please check there. But always at EricTheCarGuy.com, which is available 24/7, 365 days a year, that is there for you. We've worked very hard in building it to be a place that can answer your questions, should you have them. But now that we've done with the pleasantries, let's get started with your questions. And oh yeah, sometimes I butcher your names, but I don't mean to do that. I'm just, I guess, old and I can't read too well, whatever. I don't know. But Joshua Given, I can read that name. Hello, Eric. My mom's 2002 Chevy S10 pickup is not running right. It's a 2.2 model. Hey, we've been there. We had a Sonoma, same year. A few months back, it overheated and blew a head gasket. After the mechanic fixed it, it still doesn't run right. After we got it back, it now leaks oil, stalls at random times. It's an automatic. Still runs a little hot and it has a really loud noise coming from the engine. The noise is mainly heard at high RPMs, and it sounds like maybe bad bearings. I was thinking about rebuilding it. What do you think? It has about 150,000 miles. P.S. I love your videos. I've learned so much. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Joshua. Okay, we all, I think one of the reasons why a lot of people watch my show is because they have experiences similar to this. They go to have something fixed. It's not fixed right. And you figure, you know, if I'm going to pay somebody to screw it up, I might as well do it myself. And I completely understand the mentality and the philosophy behind that. In fact, that's probably one of the main reasons I became a mechanic myself as well. However, there are plenty of good, competent people out there. So if you find them, reward them well, bring them donuts. That said, in your situation, and I've covered this before in other videos about rebuilding engines, I'm not saying it's something you can't do, because with enough time determination, you got to learn somewhere. Okay. But if it's your daily driver and you got to get from point A to point B, I recommend replacement over trying to rebuild it yourself. There's lots involved in rebuilding an engine, and clearances are very tight. You have to get everything in there correctly, measure it all out, make sure it all works correctly. And usually people with experience do this. In fact, most technicians in shops don't do that type of work. If they're going to put their name on it, they usually either get one from salvage or they get a remanufactured engine. And that is honestly the best option because it comes with a warranty. So if installed correctly, put together correctly, the remanufactured engine is the way to go if you want it to last forever and ever. You've already got 150,000 miles on it. It's already had some bad work done to it. You may get in there and find out that there's other damage that's been done that could condemn it. Just as a general rule, I don't recommend rebuilding over replacing unless it's a rare thing, or unless it's like a project car you're working on and you're looking to develop your skills, something like that. But if you got to drive it every day, replace the engine. Don't try and rebuild it. Outside of that, you've got some issues there, and there's more than one issue. And based on the fact that it happened after this work was done, depending upon how long ago that work was done, sometimes if you're in this situation and it's immediately after the work was done, you can take it back and say, hey, you know, I'm having these issues, and see how they handle that. Give them the opportunity to fix their issue. And if they're reluctant to do so, next step would probably be to contact the Better Business Bureau, something like that, and maybe put a little pressure on them. That's a tricky situation, and I apologize that you're having to deal with that as a technician. Moving on, John Olofsson, I think I got that correct. I wanted to say, first of all, you are the best car guy on YouTube. Thank you, hands down. I love your work. The question I have, Alpha Romero 166, where the clutch acts weird at times. It's a hydraulic clutch. Sometimes when I depress the clutch in order to change gear, the pedal stays down and I have to lift it up with my foot. It could be a leak somewhere, but it happens very rarely, say a maximum of once every month. Could this be caused by a tiny leak somewhere, even though it occurs this rarely? I have yet to find any leaks anywhere in the system, and the pedal feels good. No clutch slip either. I'd be grateful for your response. Keep doing what you're doing. You're the best, a loyal fan. Thank you, Junka. Okay, now you did mention looking for leaks, which was awesome. Awesome. With a hydraulic clutch system, that's the first place you want to go. However, I would wager if there was a leak, the problem would be a bit more consistent than what you're seeing here. Now, on many clutches, there's a return spring on the clutch pedal itself. And that's a mechanical device, and I'm not exactly sure how it's set up in your vehicle, that Alpha. But if that return spring is not connected correctly, or it's not letting the pedal return correctly, or say there is a problem with the hydraulics that's not a leak. Say that maybe the piston inside the master cylinder is sticking a bit and causing the issue. Maybe it's getting into a bind, because really it's just a seal inside of a bore, and as you depress the clutch, it forces that fluid down to the slave cylinder and transfers that motion and that force down to the clutch assembly. So if something is sticking and binding, which my first thought is for, say, the clutch master itself, that could be the issue. Now, how you would determine that, I don't know. If I were in your shoes, and I'm not as familiar with that model, I might go out on the internet and Google, just search it and see if it's a common issue and if there's a common fix for that common issue. Sometimes there are, and I've done videos about this, pattern failures, and something that may be occurring on one vehicle may be occurring on another. And these days with the internet, we have tremendous resources that are at our disposal that we can use to research problems like this. I'm going to guess, I'm throwing out a guess, I'd be looking at the clutch master. I'd also be looking at whatever return mechanism is there to bring the clutch pedal back up. That's where I'd begin my search. And good luck with that. And thank you very much for your comments. Okay, Ryan Ramsey. Eric, I have a Subaru exactly like you had, except it's a 5-speed. I am jealous. Runs great, but the shifter is very loose. I can rock it side to side as if it were a neutral, but it's in gear. Any idea what could cause that? Oh, and you're awesome. Thank you. I think I know exactly what can cause that, and that is the bushings and the shift linkage. There are different parts of the mechanism that have bushings in them that, if they wear out, that slop is huge. So like a little bit of slop in a bushing can translate to a lot of slop in the shifter itself. Very easily to answer your question, I'd be looking at the shift linkage, particularly the bushings. And I'm not sure if you can replace those separately or if you have to buy the whole linkage, whatever. But either way, I don't believe it has anything to do with your transmission, which is good. It makes it easy, makes it a lot cheaper and a lot easier to deal with for the most part. But the shift linkage is where I would go with that. Baltimore, Maryland. Hello, 04 CRV makes a growl when turning left and only left. Battery light stays on, although battery charges. I was getting a sound from my left-hand side rear wheel. Just watched your caliper video. Think piston might be stuck. Gonna try some things you suggested there. Lastly, my washer system doesn't spray front nor rear. Reservoir is topped off and I hear the pump running. I suspect it may be blocked, but don't know where to start. Thanks. Okay, we have a multitude of problems here. I have an 04 Element, and I believe I know exactly what's making that noise, especially since you talked about the rear. Hondas of that vintage in particular, the CRVs and the Elements have this issue, and that is if you do not change the rear differential fluid, it will make a noise. The way that rear differential works, it works basically on the fluid, and it changes viscosity based on heat. So you don't really have four-wheel drive in that thing all the time. That's why they call it an all-wheel drive vehicle. In fact, I've done a video on my Element that will apply to your CRV about changing the rear differential fluid. It's in the Element 110,000 mile service. That's where I would go. Real super important that you use the Honda fluid when you do this. And I believe the 04 would use the double pump fluid. Some of the later models switched over to Honda DW1, their automatic transmission fluid, but the other models used a special fluid just for those differentials. So look up, I believe it's part 2 of that 110,000 mile service. And I'm going to throw this out for those of you that are watching. There will be links in the description to videos that I mentioned and other things. You got to give me a few minutes after the show concludes to get all that stuff in there. But I'm going to try to, keep it going in the description, so be sure to check there. Now, as far as it being a caliper problem, you can check there, but as I said, it's a common problem that you hear that noise, particularly on turns, because it's a differential. As you make turns, it's going to make noise. It just so happens I've shot, edited, and uploaded a video on windshield washer repair that I go through step by step of a process of solving an inoperative windshield washer, and I have a similar problem to you. I don't want to give it away, but it was in the hose. It was in the hose that goes between the reservoir and the washer sprayer itself. So look for leaks and run it for a really long time, and stuff may come dripping out where the leak is. So if you see blue fluid coming out after you're running it for a while, if you hear that motor running, the other thing is really cold time of year, cheap washer fluid, for lack of a better word, can freeze inside of the reservoir. I cover all this in this upcoming video. So look for that. In fact, it's not going to be this Friday, but I'll post it the following Friday. I'll sort of move it up in the queue for you to try to get that out there. And let's see, what else did you have? That was just washers, that kind of thing. And it could be blockage, but you basically got to pick the system apart piece by piece to find out exactly what's happening there. Okay, Jason Justice. Hi, Eric. I love the videos. I've learned so much from your videos. Thanks for your hard work. Thank you, Jason. I have a 2001 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4.7 V8 with 190,000 miles. I did a combustion test using a block tester. Half the blue test liquid turned yellow. I'm assuming I have a head gasket issue. However, I'm not losing coolant, nor does the car overheat. I did get a puff of white smoke out of the exhaust when I punched the throttle, and at times I get this sweet smell consistent with coolant. Any thoughts? Sell it for parts? Yeah. I'll put it this way, Jason. I get a lot of questions about Jeep Grand Cherokees, just saying. That means one of two things. A lot of them are out there, or a lot of them are out there with problems. Hard to say. Not judging. Don't, just put your weapons down. All right. A block test is pretty conclusive, and I try to avoid saying head gasket just to cover my butt as a technician. If I find a combustion leak into the cooling system is what that test normally reveals. Now, there's another thing it could reveal. If there's hydrocarbons in the coolant, in other words, say if you got oil in there, that's kind of obvious though, because oil and water don't mix. So you're going to see gunky, brown, gooey crap just floating around inside the radiator or wherever in your overflow bottle, that type of thing. That I've also seen set off a combustion tester. But for the most part, it's combustion gas. And, everybody says compression test. A compression test, in my experience, is not going to tell you if you've got, a head gasket issue going into the cooling system. A leak down test might, but a compression test, not so much. And a leak down test, I've done a video on that, is where you put compressed air into the cylinder. In your case, you're going to have to go through all 8 because you don't know which cylinder is an issue. But you run compressed air into that cylinder, and that compressed air, if there is a combustion leak in that particular cylinder that you're putting compressed air into, that compressed air will leak into that cooling system. And if you remove the radiator cap, you should see little bubbles coming up through there. That would be totally conclusive in your case. From what you have so far, it sounds like you have a combustion issue, but you could confirm it further with a leak down test. Moving on. Okay. This is an interesting question. This is Jordan Petty. Hi, Eric. I love your videos. I own a 1990 Toyota Camry DX, 180,000 miles. Basically, I want to convert my HVAC controls, which are mechanical controls, except for the fan speed, to electrical controls. I've done a ton of research on this with little success, like nobody has ever done it before. I've looked up solenoids to change the electricity into mechanical motion, and I'm pretty sure this conversion is feasible. What are your thoughts? I know it's an old car, but I'm just wondering about this conversion in general. Okay, my thoughts. Don't be mad. It sounds like you got too much time on your hands. But I understand. I understand wanting to modify it, wanting to change something, want to make that vehicle your own. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't even think of doing it. And that's probably the reason why you have had little success, because it's not something people really, I mean, when you think about modifying your vehicle, the first thing, I don't think the first thing off the top of my head is going to be, how do I modify my AC controls? But that's just me. But you're correct in that in later model vehicles, they have done away with those mechanical controls and gone with electrical. And if I were you, I would look for newer controls. They have stepper motors, things like that, but there's usually control units that run those, because you have to consider it's not just doors opening and closing so much. There's also the blend door. So when you slide the temperature slider from hot to cold, that is I don't want to say infinitely variable, but it's certainly a variable motion that you're going to have to contend with. So that's going to be the trickiest one. And then some of the other blend doors and things inside the HVAC are controlled in such a way to where there's one door that has multiple functions, like when it's all the way up. Or a perfect example is defrost heat. So it splits it between the defroster units and the heat down below. So that's another tricky thing to do. Is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. With enough money, time, and gumption, you can do just about anything. So I say go for it if you want to try it, because I mean, you take it to car shows, you can show it off. You can be the guy to write about how to do it. Let's put it that way. But as far as my opinion on it, it's not necessarily something I would do, but I'm not going to hold you back. Follow your dreams, man. All right, and then we have some other people responding to Jordan about things, and somebody else. It looks like Baltimore, Maryland might have found a shop. Let's see. Okay, Brody Frenner. Hi, Eric. My dad has a 2011 Dodge Ram 1500 Sport 5.8 liter and is looking to install new headlights. Doing research, I wasn't sure on exactly how to tell if the lights came with just running lights or high beams. How do you tell? And do you know any brands that would be good? Thanks again. I love your videos. Still the man. Thank you. I also hate GM. Haha. The Montana should be driven off a cliff. Thank you for that. I don't hate GM, okay? But I have had issues with some vehicles and they were GM vehicles, but I've also had issues with some Volkswagens. I've gotten into some fights with those in the past as well. But that being said, no, I don't hate GM vehicles. In fact, the cars I loved growing up were the Corvette, and later came to absolutely love the 69 Camaro. I love that. I always wanted an SSRS. So give me GM all the way up until about 72 Buick Rivieras. They made a ton of really great cars. Chevelles, love Chevelles. Pontiacs, love Pontiacs. You know, there's a lot there, but the Pontiac Montana, not so much. I'm getting off on a tangent, but to answer your question, it's actually fairly simple to find out what type of headlight beams you have. Ask your parts professional. They have a listing for all of this stuff that's there. I suspect you just have the single bulb dual beam headlights is what those would be referred to. And I'm not sure if you're talking about upgrading to, like, say, HID or LED, or just going back to stock. 2011 probably has HID or LED to start with, and I'm not completely familiar with it, so I couldn't say right out of the gate. I think it's going to be a single bulb dual filament kind of situation. And it's, like I said, it's pretty easy to see because you either have two headlights in the back of the headlight or you have one. If you have one, then it's just a single beam. And I'm not quite clear on exactly what's wrong, whether you've just got burned out headlights or something else. So I wish I had more information, but I think that should get you there. Just look at the back of it. Even better to just ask a parts person, because they can just punch it into their computer and look it up and tell you exactly what bulb you need. That would be the quickest and dirtiest way to get to it. Okay, more stuff about the HVAC. That sparked a discussion in this. Okay, Fernando Pantoja. Once again, sorry about the names. Apologies. Hey, Eric, do you know the correct torques for the valve cover on a 1995 Honda Accord 2.7 V6? I have a really bad oil leak, thanks. Okay, 1995 is the older, that's like the first, the 2.7 V6. That's like the first Honda V6. I worked on quite a few of those in the first generation Acura Legends. And they do have actually several places where there are oil leaks, in particular the side cover along there. So it is technically a valve cover, but there's two on that engine. There's one on the top, and then there's one on the side. It's a little weird. Also, Sterling used this same engine for a bit too. So for those of you across the pond, I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. In fact, I've worked on a Sterling, and it's weird because they took everything that was all metric and added imperial and metric onto the engine and made it weird. That being said, getting back to your question, Fernando, the oil leak, many times is caused by those seals on that side cover. That's where you'd want to go. And the valve covers too, those also leak. They get, especially something as old as that, it may be all hard and brittle and causing that oil leak. But that was actually a common problem with that engine. I would strongly urge you to use Honda parts. And the reason I say that is because they fit, there's a little groove. It's like a little O-ring almost is what it is that has to fit into a groove, and it has to stay in that groove. And I take just little dots of Honda Bond and put it on the back side of that O-ring just to hold it in place. I don't group the whole gasket up. You don't want to do that. Just put enough, or you can even use like a gasket adhesive. But from my experience, and here's the other thing, like the aftermarket ones I've seen, they roll over and they don't quite stay into place. And the reason why that's so important is because when you go to install these things, you've got very little clearance to slip this thing down into the side of the engine to get it up on there and then start threading your bolts in. So that can be a challenge. But that I'm going to guess is probably the cause of your oil leak. As I said, it's quite common for that to happen. And that's where I would go in this instance. You also might consider switching to a high mileage oil. In doing so, the high mileage oil has seal conditioners and things in it to help bring back some life to those seals that might be hardened up a little bit. Does it work every single time? No, but at least it's a step in the right direction to try and help you. And in some cases, it can help. I mean, it's not necessarily cure-all, but I would argue that it's a step in the right direction. Gerald Hicks, I've come across a truck that has different sized tires on the same axle. The truck calls for 235/70/16. One is correct. One is the correct size. The other is a 225/70/16. Give me a second. I'm talking so much. People are saying not to worry over this, as it's not my truck anyway. Good point. This person had a problem with the electrical, and that is why I was I was having a look at it. I heard a growling sound as I drove it across a parking lot from the back end of the truck. Have you any advice? Both front tires are 235/75/16. This is a 2001 F-150 work truck, not four-wheel drive. This person just acquired it recently, and I've been told just to get new tires all the way around, the truck has 178,000 miles. Two words there stick out: work truck. How many of you have driven a work truck? How many of you have driven a work truck like it's your truck? You get my point? Work trucks are precisely that. They are work trucks, and they get abused, and pretty much anything kind of goes. Now, as far as the different tire sizes, I've actually done a video about this, and the first number is the measurement in millimeters of the outer circumference of the tire. And since you've got one that's 235 and one that's 225, you're 10 millimeters different from one tire to the other. And you've got a noise coming from the rear. Now that differential is probably trying to figure out what's going on, because one wheel is actually traveling a different distance than the other wheel. And this is what you want to avoid. You certainly want to avoid different first numbers on tires, especially on the same axle, because that really messes with the differential. If I were you, I would just rotate the tires front to back, or rotate one of the tires, get rid of that oddball tire off the back. And since it's a two-wheel drive truck, that should help the differential out. Probably not a bad idea to change the fluid back there also, since you've already got a noise. I don't know if it's a limited slip something or not. It's hard to say, because I mean, there are lots of options, but for the most part, yeah, a two-wheel drive truck, I would say change the fluid, take one of the tires in the front, move it to the back for now. As far as getting all new tires, it depends on the condition of the tires. If that tire in the front that you rotate back is still got plenty of tread life left in it, stick with that one. But you definitely want to take those two different size tires off of that same axle, because what that does is it makes the differential think it's always going around a turn, and it will heat it up. It just doesn't like that. In fact, there's a video that I love. It's from the 1930s, I think, and General Motors put it out of all people. It's really good about differential operation. I will try and dig that up and post a link in the description for you so that you get an idea. So it's really nice at making it so you can drive around a turn without the wheel hopping, but it's not so nice when you get stuck, because the wheel with the least amount of traction is what gets the power. That's why we love posi traction. Got a video on that coming up Friday, because we're going to talk about the Fairmont. Oh, Gerald is just asking me a general question. Armenian sewed freak, Armenian sewed freak, whatever that means. What is your opinion on split rims? Never really used them, so it's hard for me to say that I have an opinion. But just make sure they're sealed up so they don't leak. That one is a statement. Okay, M Ross, or M Rose. I have a 2003 GMC Yukon. On my truck, I have heaters in my seats, mirrors, auto dim, and various controls. Recently, my passenger seat stopped working along with a passenger mirror and window not working. Seemed like a whole right side went out. Any suggestions? That is an excellent observation. And with electrical problems like that, you're absolutely right. It's like branches on a tree. So if just one thing is affected, then just that one branch is affected. But if you've got a whole bunch of different things affected, like you point out on the right side of the vehicle here, then some part of that tree branch, there's a problem there. And the first place I would look, and I doubt these would all be on the same fuse, because a seat heater, maybe the controls might be, or maybe it might be a control unit issue. That's a really tough call. I would really need to take a look at the wiring diagram. If it were me, this is what I would do. I'd sit down with the wiring diagram and take a look and see where all these different components are related. Is there a certain harness and a connection in a wiring harness that leads to all these things? I'd be looking to that connector for the issue. Maybe it got some goop in it, something, soda got spilled on it. I don't know, that affected the entire circuit. So the wiring diagram is going to be your best friend in this situation if you can track one down. My favorite place for wiring diagrams is a service manual. A lot of times you can find these things online these days, and that's what I'd be doing. I'd be doing my best to dig up a wiring diagram and look for where all those branches come together. And I imagine you'll find that maybe there's a connector someplace. But of course, with any electrical issue, always start by checking the fuses, all of them. Like if you've got a fuse box under the hood, if you've got a fuse box on this side, you got a fuse box on that side of the car, check them all. Check every single fuse and make sure they're all good. And in the past, I've solved so many problems just by going through that diagnostic step. So electrical problems, check fuses first thing. In your case, next step, grab a wiring diagram from somewhere. All right, we're getting close to time here. Okay, Max Goetzman. Hey Eric, I have a 2003 Dodge Dakota. I've been having some transmission issues. The truck seems to shift late, especially into the overdrive gear, automatic of course. It's been going on for a while now, and I've adjusted by sometimes letting my foot off the gas a little when it's struggling to shift, and this seems to help. The shifting issue also seems to occur when I slow to a stop. The truck wants to shift into neutral. I've had the fluid changed, but it didn't seem to help much. I guess what I'm wondering is if I should bring it to a transmission shop, what type of issues might they find other than a done transmission? My first question to you that you have no way of answering is, have you changed the tires? Have you put perhaps larger tires on this truck and recently, and did that problem coincide with putting these larger tires on the truck? Reason I ask. Larger tires, as we talked about in the earlier question about different tire sizes, affects speedometer readings. And your automatic transmission, particularly on one of this vintage, will take signals from the speed sensor and take those cues for when to shift. If you change wheel sizes and you don't tell the computer you did it, or you don't compensate for it in some other way, it thinks you're going at a different speed than you're actually going, and therefore the shift points will change. So, and particularly if, well, I'm not going to say if you've got a different size tires on the back than you do on the front, because I don't, you didn't mention if it was 4x4 or anything like that. But that being said, if you change tire size, that can affect that. Now, if you don't have a check engine light that coincides with this issue, that's what I'd be looking for. I mean, if you've got a shifting problem like this, you've already changed the fluid, which is an excellent place to start. Excellent place to start. But also, if you have a check engine light and you have any codes, and those codes are for transmission components, that's worth looking into, because, as I stated, many transmissions are electronically shifted. Therefore, there could be an electrical problem causing this issue. But as I said, if you change the tires and you've got different size tires that one is on their stock, that could upset the speedometer reading and therefore upset the shift points of the transmission. Because you talk about it being sort of global. I'm just guessing here, just guessing. What the heck? Let's answer another one. Okay. We have Stanley Keith YOLO. Greetings, Sir Eric. I have a Honda Civic 1997 model manual transmission, and I think it has a problem on its transmission. The problem is when going to shift into third gear from second gear, there is a grinding sound before fully engaging third gear. Is this a synchro problem, or is it adjustable anywhere? Only third gear, I have this grinding sound. Thanks a lot, and more power. All right, Stanley. Stanley, what you have is honestly an extremely common problem on that transmission. In fact, I've had many of them apart for this very thing. It is, as you suspect, the third gear synchronizer. And what the synchronizer is designed to do in a manual transmission, when you're shifting gears, going from one gear to the next, there's a couple of shafts and they have gears on them. Think of a bicycle without the chain, and the gears are directly connected. And so when you go to shift from one gear to the next, it's going to have to match the speed of the power output coming from the engine to the next gear. And the way it does this is with synchronizers. And those synchronizers are designed to slow things down and match speed before it slips into gear. And what's happening is that synchronizer is worn out. So it goes to slip into that gear, and that gear is still spinning, and that's the grinding noise you hear. And that's why you only hear it specifically in one, during that one shift going into third gear. Actually, it's not, for me, it's not a difficult repair. I've been inside many manual transmissions. They're not like automatic transmissions. It's not brain surgery. The other thing I will say is use Honda fluid or GM Synchromesh. I've had good luck with GM Synchromesh, but I actually believe that's more expensive than the Honda manual transmission fluid. Don't just use straight motor oil. That helps the internal components last a lot longer. All right, I'm running a slightly long tonight just because. Eugene McSwain, I have a 2004 Pacifica that burned lots of gas. What should I do? You're from the future, dude. Are we still using gas then? I'm just kidding. Sorry. Fuel consumption. I actually have an article on my website about increased fuel consumption and the things to check for that. I'm going to point you in that direction once again. Give me some time to put this together after I complete this hangout, and I will put that information in the description for you because there's a few things to check. But if it's burning lots and lots of gas, it could be a fuel issue somewhere, and checking fuel pressure. Once again, that's a lengthy explanation I'm not going to jump into now. Teddy Robinson, why do car makers have so many computers in a single car? I'm going to answer this one quickly also. Copper is expensive, and they use copper in wires inside cars. So if there's a way to eliminate the amount of wires inside of a vehicle, they're going to do it because they're going to want to save money any way they can. So what do? They put one wire instead of 12 wires, and they save all that money on copper. They also save in manufacturing. And they use that one wire kind of like a USB cable. So it transfers a digital signal, not a voltage, well, it's a voltage signal, but they transfer a digital signal over that wire instead of sending power or ground to something. So instead of having 12 wires to do, 3 different things, they use one wire to do 3 different things. So that's the reason why they moved to that. If you ever wonder why car makers do anything, it's to save money. They want to put out the best product they can with it for as little money in manufacturing as possible. All right, we're over. And I see some of you jumped in towards the end, and I apologize for not getting to those at this time. But as I said, I will put links in the description to additional information. Also, the next show will be February 4th. EricTheCarGuy.com, 24/7, 365. Don't forget about that. I hope you like my lava hat. It's kind of warm, but clean. If you wish to connect with me socially, I can be found on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram. And I close each of my videos with be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and I will see you next time. Thank you.